All right. Shalom, shalom. I'd like to start off first and foremost, giving all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, better known as Great Millstone, who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. All right, the Tabernacle of David. All right, and I'm your brother Montezatbach, back out here week in and week out once again, preaching the downfall of Babylon the Great, which is America. All right, and helping to raise up, all right, the hopefully elect out of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to revisit, all right, going into the history of the 12 tribes, all right, and who they are today, all right, dealing with biblical prophecy. Okay, and what I've done here, because there's a lot of information, I've actually got some notes um, written down on my phone here, and I'm just going to go through um, some of the things that I've written down, and we're going to start at Genesis the 49th chapter, all right, because there seems to be, new people coming into the faith, and with them coming into the faith, you also have a lot more, uh, you know, so-called Polynesians, all right, today that are also coming in, but there's this old doctrine that's still circling of it being said that the so-called Polynesians are from the tribe of Naphtali, okay, and that's not true, okay. That is an old played out doctrine, all right, and if the spirit permits, Lord will, we can go into that a little bit today, all right. We're not going to go heavy into it, but we'll see where the spirit takes us. Now, when you deal with the 12 tribes of Israel, okay, we understand that pertaining to biblical prophecy, that the bulk of the 12 tribes, okay, will be over in the Western Hemisphere, okay, which the scriptures calls it the land of the North, all right? And let's prove that. Let's get a scripture. We'll start at the book of Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 18. And it reads, it says, in those days, the house of Judah, okay, which Judah right here represents you so-called Negroes, all right, the African Americans, all right? So it says, in those days, the house of Judah, and also the house of Judah consists not only of Judah, but you also have Benjamin and Levi, okay? Because during that time, all right, from the Babylonian Empire, the Northern Kingdom were already in the Americas, all right, pursuant to Second Esdras, the 13th chapter, all right? So those 10 tribes, okay, from Simeon, from Zebulon, Ephraim, all the way down to Issachar, they were already in the Americas. Okay, and this is history, all right, that is pretty much covered up, all right. But if you understand, all right, not only the teachings and the information, beginning with the apostles that have been brought out, going down, as well as other secular history information, books and so forth, artifacts, okay, you are able to link that, okay, through the scriptures, all right. And Lord's will, we can do that here in today's camp session. Now, Jeremiah 3 and 18, it says, in those days, the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, okay? Because remember, pertaining to the curses, all right, we were split, all right? The northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, all right, they went into the Assyrian captivity first, all right? But then eventually they ended up wanting to take matters into their own hands to leave from the Assyrian captivity and to go to another land wherein mankind never dwelt, which was speaking of, all right, the land of Arsareth, all right, which the word Arsareth in the Hebrew just means another land. And basically, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, they took it upon themselves, all right, to go over to the Americas to try to keep the law, statutes, commandments, which they didn't end up keeping anyway, all right. So it says, in those days, the house of Judah, which represents the southern kingdom, and with the house of Israel, which represents the northern kingdom, all right, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers, okay. And this is another way on how we can prove, okay, that the people that are claiming to be in the land over there today, they're not the people, all right, because when have you seen all 12 tribes come back together to be placed back into the Holy Land? Okay, you haven't seen that, right? So that's how you know that we're still. It's talking about. Um, it's talking about this time. Okay, and so we'll get into it, but Now, building off of that, let's get Zechariah. All right. And let's see here, the book of this is the book of Zechariah, chapter 2, and verse 6 on down. And it says, Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north. All right, saith the Lord Yahweh, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of heaven, saith the Lord Yahweh. All right, so remember, all 12 tribes, okay, they will be scattered across the four winds, but the bulk of the tribes will end up in the Americas. Okay, it says, deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. So there's the linkage there to what the land of the north is. The land of the north, all right, goes back to Babylon. What's Babylon today? America, right? So let's build off of that. Let's go to Salaki, not Baruch, but let's go from there to Micah chapter 4 and verse 10. Micah 4 and 10. It says, be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, okay, speaking of Jerusalem, right? And thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, okay? So we was going to dwell out of the city, which is Jerusalem. We was going to go, all right, into the field, okay, which that's speaking of going into Africa, okay? And then there, thou shalt go even to Babylon, because when the northern kingdom ended up on the west part of Africa, mainly Ghana, okay, what happened? You had the Portuguese, all right, you had the French, you had the Dutch, the Portuguese, right? You had the British. They came over, all right, doing the transatlantic slave trade, and they gathered up the southern kingdom, all right, and then they brought them over to the Americas. Okay, let's get a precept. After we finish this, it says, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, and there shalt thou be delivered. There the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thy enemies. Okay, so the greatest exodus is going to happen out of America. Although, yes, all the elect of Israel will be beamed up and delivered from the four corners of the earth. But the greatest deliverance is going to happen in America, because that's where resides the bulk of the 12 tribes. Okay, so let's go from there. And let's get Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 33. And it says, thus said the Lord Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah, okay, both northern and southern kingdom, it says, were oppressed together. And all that took them captives held them fast, and they refused to let them go. So that's speaking of when they ended up gathering the southern kingdom, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, okay, when they brought them over to the Americas, okay, we joined in with our other brethren, the northern kingdom, and eventually we were all oppressed together, because you have remnants of the northern kingdom that was also a part of the transatlantic slave trade, and they was being taken from South America back into Europe. Okay, and that history is out there. You can look that up. You had the tribe of Gad, which is the so-called Native Americans. Okay, you had a few Issacharites, the so-called Mexicans. Okay, you even had some Reubenites, which is your so-called Seminole Indians today. All right, where it's been said that they were too on the slave ships. Okay, and this is history that it's not really covered up. All right, anybody would some intelligence to want to go out and look up this information. All right, you do have the internet. All right, so it's out there, right? So that's when we were oppressed together. Now let's go from there to the Apocrypha. All right, and whoo, man, that sun is hot. Hold on, we're gonna have to take this here a little bit, come out of the sun, because it is scorching. Salakia. Get out of the sun real quick. Yeah, that's a little bit better. All right, and hopefully you brothers and sisters can see. So that's a little bit better for me. All right, Salakia for that. So let's go to the Apocrypha. real quick. And let's go to Second Esdras, all right, the 13th chapter. Because what you have to understand was during the time of the Assyrian captivity, the northern kingdom was the first to go into slavery. Okay, so this is Second Esdras 13, and let's drop down to, we'll start at verse 39. All right, so we're going to read the history on how we came into the Americas. All right, and then we're going to go into Genesis, the 49th chapter, so we can break down the 12 tribes list. All right, so Second Esdras 13 and verse 39, it says, and whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, okay, those are the 10 tribes, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, who Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. All right, and you can get that account when you read Second Esdras, the 17th chapter, I believe. Right? Matter of fact, sorry, not Second Esdras. What I'm saying, let's get here. Second Kings. All right, Salakia, forgive me for slipping the tongue. So Second Kings chapter 17, and I want to get straight to the point. I'm gonna start at verse 22. It says, for the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them until Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight, as he has said by all of his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. Okay, so when you understand the history, all right, going back to Second Kings, the 17th chapter, all right, that's when that whole, surrounded the northern kingdom, going back in that time in secular history, they were the first to go into captivity under the Assyrian Empire. So now let's go back from there to Second Esdras, the 13th chapter. And we left off at verse 40. Let's read it again. It says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their land in the time of Hoshea the king, who Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, right, and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Now, when you go back to Second Kings, all right, the 17th chapter, this is what Salmanasar brought into the land. All right, Second Kings 17 and 24 says, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, from Kutah, from Ava, from Hamath, from Seraphim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. All right, this is why when you read the account of that Samaritan woman, all right, by the well, when Yahweh Shah was on the scene in John the 4th chapter, okay, and she spoke about getting that living waters, all right, she mentioned that her fathers worshipped here on this mountain. And what she was actually referring to is her ancestors of those heathen nations that were brought into the land, okay, of Israel by King Salmanasar. So that goes to show you that when they speak about, like, you got those Ethiopian Jews, or what do they call them, Philistine Jews, they're not the children of Israel, okay? They're Hamites. Ethiopians go back, they're Cushites, okay? Cush goes back to the, Cush is one of the sons of Ham. Okay, when you go to Genesis, the 10th chapter, and you read the lineage. So all of those heathens that came into the Holy Land via way of that first king, Salmanasar, or not first king, but one of the kings of Assyria, being Salmanasar, all right, he brought in all of those heathens into the land. And what ended up happening was because they didn't know how to keep the laws of the land. Why? Because the laws weren't given to the heathen nations. They was only given to the children of Israel. All right. But nevertheless, the Lord ended up sending lions to shred them apart. And so what happened was they needed to get a priest, all right, from the tribe of Levi to come back to the land to teach them on how to do the right sacrifices, basically how to keep the laws of the land. All right, so that's why you will have a lot of heathens today, all right, that acclaim so-called Jewish descent, because it goes back to the time when King Salmanasar brought in those heathens into the Holy Land when the Northern Kingdom was kicked out. So that's why, you know, you're going to have a lot of heathens, all right, that's going to claim to be of the descents of the 12 tribes of Israel, but in actuality, they're not, all right? And an account of that is, like I said, when you read up on the Phoenician Jews, which are called Ethiopian Jews, all right, they're not the people, okay? So, you know, so going on to that, how you doing, brother? So moving on and building off of that, let's go back to Second Esdras and verse 13. Okay, carrying on, it says, verse 41, we left off, but they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen. Now you know who that multitude was speaking about those other heathen nations that King Salmanasar brought in, right? It says, and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Now this is speaking of, all right, what's known as America today. But before it was called America, all right, when you look up the Jewish Encyclopedia, all right, the word Arsarit, which we're going to read down further in this verse, was speaking of the region of America. Okay, and the reason why I said neither mankind dwelt there is because of the fact that although it was not governed by any nation, you still had different people, like such as seafaring people, like the Zidonians, the ships of Tarshish. All right, they were still traveling over there to that region. Okay, so when it says that mankind never dwelt over there, it was speaking of that particular region had never been governed. All right, but you still had people that was traveling via way of ships. Okay, and you can read that account dealing with King Solomon. All right, I believe that's what's that, First Kings, either I think the 10th chapter, where it talks about King Hiram, all right, who was of the king of the Hamites, all right, that brotherly covenant that he made with King Solomon, and it took him 3 years for his navy men to travel from Israel or Palestine today all the way to the Americas, and then come back from the Americas back into the Holy Land. And when they measured that time, all right, that was a total of 3 years. So it took them 1.5 years to go from the Levant region where they were situated over to the Western Hemisphere, and then from the Western Hemisphere back to the Levant region. Okay, and that was a total estimate of 3 years, right? And all of this history is documented. So going on, it says, Second Esdras 13 and 42, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land, right? And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over, right? Because when you understand, when you look at a map of the continent of Africa and where they went down to Euphrates, they went around all the way down to the bottom of the continent of Africa, all the way upwards towards the west. All right. And when you understand the storms surrounding that part of the region down in South Africa, all right, just going along the coastal lines and stuff, there was a reason. That was the reason why the Heavenly Father had to hold back the floods and stuff so that they can pass over safely. You see? So it goes on to say, verse 45, for through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half. Now remember, I just spoke about King Hiram sending, all right, which let me prove that. Let's go to First Kings, the 10th chapter. All right, so that you can get the understanding. Let's see here. We can start at verse, this is First Kings chapter 10, and let me type it in. Yep, First Kings chapter 10, and I'm gonna get to the point. First Kings 10 and 22. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Right now, to back up what I just read, this is a website called thetreasurenet.com. All right, and it was said the reign of Solomon was enveloping the entire world. Israel's close neighbor, Phoenicia, and their expert navigators were working with the servants of Solomon from both country parts. The ships of Tarshish sailed extremely long voyages to bring back all kinds of raw materials and items, such as copper and other auras, flora, fauna samples, exotic animals. All right, such as your turkeys, wild turkeys, and stuff like that, which the scriptures calls it peacocks. But when you go into the Latin word for peacock, all right, the English translation of it is actually turkey, right? So it says here, reference to Second Chronicles chapter 9 verse 21, or First Kings chapter 10, which we just read. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the service of Hiram. Every 3 years, once came the ships of Tarshish bringing gold and silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. It would help explain the need of 3-year journeys if the seamen had to cross the ocean to come to these far off isles in America. It says the fact that the trading ships of Phoenicia did have docks in ancient America can be proved from inscriptions they left behind. All right. And they showed you that, like, when you go, I know in right around when you talk about the tribe of I believe it's the tribe of Zebulon, the Guatemalans and the Panamanians, right? When you have the docks of the seas. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull that up real quick so I can make it simpler, right? But when you speak about the tribe of Zebulon, you're speaking about the Panama Canal, and basically around that part of the in South America, they actually found remnants of Phoenician travelers, which were Hermetic tribes, and that explains also those different Olmec heads down there in South America, which those Olmec heads, I say Olmec, they're not Salaki, Olmec heads were basically your Hermetic nations. Now, Jake could sit up there and tell you that they were, of our people, and that's not true. Those Olmec heads were actually those so-called Africans, which were Hermetic tribes from Zidonian, all right, from the ships of Tarshish. And what they did was they would set up those heads so every time they would come over, all right, every 1.5 years, to gather up all of the goodly things that they possess off the land to take back to Solomon. All right, those Olmec heads were left there for them to navigate around the island. You see? And that's what a lot of people don't understand. So going back, see if we got some more here. Yeah, let me read that part again. It says the fact that the trading ships of Phoenicia did have docks in ancient America, and that's speaking around the Panama Canal, right? It said here that it can be proved by inscriptions they left behind. All right. And it says there's a book here that anybody can look up. See Dr. Barry Fell's book, America BC, and also reading Stephen M. Collins, The Lost 10 Tribes of Israel. All right. Which he actually goes into proving, all right, that, the tribe of Gad, which is your so-called Native Americans, are from the lost tribe of, Israel. Issachar, the so-called Mexicans. All right, when you go into the Mayans, the Aztecs, okay, you have Naphtali as well. All right, which is your Argentinian Chileans today. Okay, they make up the tribe of Naphtali. All right, they own the western part of South America, which backs up the prophecy in Genesis the 49th chapter. All right, which we're going to go into a little bit in a second here. So going back, okay, Second Esdras 13 and 45, it says, "For through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half." So now it would make sense that it took the ships of Tarshish 3 years for a journey, because if it's telling you here that it took the northern kingdom a year and a half to go from leaving down from the Euphrates River, crossing over, all right, to the other side of the Western Hemisphere to go into South America, if it took them a year and a half, then the scriptures line up with secular history. All right, so that's a total of 3 years, a year and a half going one way and a year and a half going back the other way. You see? So moving on, it says, "For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, in the same region is called Arsarit." All right, now when you go into the word Arsarit, you can even look this up in the Jewish Encyclopedia. They'll tell you that that's speaking of none other than the land of America, okay, or the region, all right, because you have North America and South America, right? So now building off of that, that's how the northern kingdom, all right, from Simeon all the way down to Issachar, that's how they ended up over in the Americas. So when people, like our own people say, well, we were already here first, we have already been here, there was no such thing as no transatlantic slave trade, this, that, and the third. The confusion comes as to, because yes, they didn't come over through slavery, the northern kingdom. They left on their own will to come to the Americas. All right, but that wasn't the case from the southern kingdom, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Okay, Judah, Yehoiada, being the so-called Negroes. All right, Benjamin, being the West Indies, Jamaicans, and Levi, Lawaya, being your so-called Haitians today. All right, that make up the southern kingdom. All right, they came later on. All right, but the northern kingdom was already there first. All right, and it was set up, all right, through prophecy for us to be joined together, because the prophecy had to be fulfilled for the bulk of the 12 tribes to end up in the land of the north, which is Babylon the Great, which is America. You see? So now let's get into these tribes. All right. And like I said, it's a lot of history, but to keep it short and basic, I just wrote down a few notes, because it's a lot of history to go into. But I just wrote down the important pieces, all right, for you, Akim and Aquaf, to take from this. So let's get into it. So this is Genesis chapter 49, all right? And starting at the top. Now, the title of this chapter at the top reads, Israel's prophecy concerning his sons. And really, this is speaking of the latter days, all right, of the descendants of the 12 tribes, which makes up you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. All right. So Genesis 49 and 1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I might tell you which shall befall you in the last days. All right. Now, when you look up the Hebrew word here, the last days or last, all right, is Akarayath, which means the latter time, which represents a prophetic for future time. So clearly this is speaking of in these days that we're in now. This is known as the last days. Okay. Or as the apostles say, we're in the last days of the last days. Okay. So Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Right now, verse 2, it says, gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Now it says here, verse 3, Reuben, okay, which Reuben today is your Seminole Indians, okay, or Ra'awaba, okay. It says, thou art my firstborn, my might and my beginning of my strength. the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Okay. And basically, all right, when you deal with Reuben, all right, dealing with the Seminole Indians, what you have to understand about the Reubenites is that they have an aristocratic ruling class of mentality as a nation of people. Okay. And they are one of the last native tribes to sign peace treaty deals, all right, with Esau Edom. Okay. When you go into the Seminole Indian Wars, when you look up the secular history, right? Now, they're known, all right, as an excellency of dignity, all right, and power, because when Judah came over, all right, which is once again Yahawada, the so-called Negroes, all right, when Judah came over, they actually acknowledged Judah being a head tribe, okay, and with them acknowledging Judah being a head tribe, all right, that's why today you also have a term known as Black Seminole Indians, okay, mixed in with the Reubenites, all right, which a lot of people don't even know that. So when you hear that term Black Seminole Indian, it's because when Judah came over through the slave ships, okay, they took the Reubenites, they actually took Judah in because they recognized as Judah being a head tribe, right? And they actually set Judah over them, all right, when you go into that history. That's why you have the term Black Seminole Indians, all right? Now, the term Seminole, when you look it up in the etymology, it means wild one, okay, or runaway, okay? Now, with them recognizing Judah being a head tribe, all right, amongst them, they actually set up Judah as kings and rulers over them. And this is speaking of the tribe of Reuben, okay? So moving on, Genesis 49:4 says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it, and he went up to my couch. So if you understand the story, Reuben slept with his father's concubine, all right, or his wife, however you want. Matter of fact, Salakia, let me not butcher it. Let's go to First Corinthians, the 5th chapter. Sorry, First Chronicles, the 5th chapter. Salakia. Yeah. First Chronicles 5:1. It is reported commonly. First Salakia. I went to Corinthians. First Chronicles 5:1. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. All right. And who's the sons of Joseph? Ephraim, which is your so-called Puerto Ricans, and Manasseh, which is your Cubans. All right. But we know through the spirit, it was eventually set up for Judah. All right. The so-called African Americans. All right. They became the head tribe. It was just set up in the spirit for it to go down that way. All right. And who comes from that head tribe? None other than Yahushua HaMashiach. Hebrews 7:14. If one of the Akim want to post that, Babakusha, do so. So verse 2, it says, for Judah prevailed above his brethren, and of his came the chief ruler, but the birthright was Joseph. Okay. Because when you get Genesis the 48th chapter, all right, it goes into that, which Manasseh was he was the eldest son, but Ephraim, okay, he got the blessing. All right, it was set up in the spirit that way, right? So moving on, Genesis 49:4, let's read it again. It says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it, and he went up to my couch. All right, right. So when it talks about unstable as waters, all right, that's speaking of when you go into Seminole, all right, which means runaway, okay, or wild one, because originally the Seminole Indians, they were stationed down in Florida, all right, but after all the controversy during the Seminole Indian Wars and stuff like that, and what Esau did to them, tricking them into signing those treaties, and then going back and reneging off of those treaties, eventually they ended up in, I think, some of their reservation camps is in Oklahoma, all right? That's where they ended up at. So, and basically also they like to move around a lot, all right? That's why they would be known as unstable as waters, all right? Now, let's build off of that. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter. All right. And this is going into the blessings. All right. Because you got to understand, you got to go into what was going to befall the 12 tribes in the last days, but you also got to tie in the blessings. All right. So Deuteronomy 33, I'm going to start at verse 4. It says, Moses commanded us a law, even the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. And he was king in Jeshurun, which Jeshurun or Yashuan is another title name given to Israel. When the heads of the people in the tribes of Israel were gathered together, let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. Why? Because during the time of the Indian Wars, all right, Reuben got slaughtered by Esau Edom, man. Okay. And so it was said through the blessing to let Reuben live, because when you go into secular history, Esau done a hell of a lot of slaughtering to the Reubenites, the so-called Seminole Indians. All right. And if I remember correctly, it was projected when they was pushed up into Oklahoma, it was something like only 200 left, if memory serves me correct. Okay, if one of you brothers want to quickly look that up and post it on a comment board for the people that's listening and learning and watching, you can do so. So going back, all right, so that's dealing with the Reubenites. Once again, the tribe of Reuben today is your so-called Seminole Indians. All right. Moving on, Genesis 49:5, it says, Simeon and Levi are brethren, all right, and the instruments of cruelty are in their habitations, right? Because today, all right, Simeon or Shemaiwan is your so-called Dominicans, okay, from the Dominican Republic, all right, and obviously your Levi's, Lawaya, is your so-called Haitians, and both of them reside into the island today known as Hispaniola, okay? And so it goes on. We read that verse again. It says, Simeon and Levi are brethren, and the instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. Okay, right, because once again, both are brethren because they both reside under the same island, which is known as Hispaniola today. Now, once again, Shemaiwan, which is Simeon, is your so-called Dominicans, and your Levites or Lawaya is your Haitians, right? Now, the island of Hispaniola today, all right, is the Dominican Republic, all right, in Haiti. Now, when it speaks about the instruments of cruelty, that goes into the voodoo, all right, that the Levites practice, the Haitians. And then if you are Dominican, that goes into the worship of Santeria, all right, or Santeria, okay, which is another form of witchcraft, all right. And those were their instruments of cruelty. Matter of fact, when you go into the history during the French wars with the Haitians, okay, they basically they actually used, all right, because remember Levi was blessed with the Thummim and Urim, okay, on the right hand side, all right, but even though they was blessed with it, they actually used it on the left hand side, and that's how they was able to defeat the French the French army, all right. And I forget, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I forget the Haitian general that led them. But they actually, when you go into history, the Haitians, they actually used that power on the left-hand side, voodoo, to defeat the French army. A lot of people don't understand that history. Okay, so going on now, when it talks about, let's get it here. It says, verse 6: "O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. My honor be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged, all right, down a wall." All right, now when it talks about the secret assembly, it's talking about their witchcraft, okay? Because once again, you know, they practice voodoo, all right, or Santeria, all right. When you look up, all right, those different forms of worship practices that they go into, all those different rituals. And as a matter of fact, they showed you that in the Disney movie Coco, all right. And I was speaking to my little ones the other day, and I was telling them going into how in the movie Coco, all right, they got the skeletons and everything, which I forget the terminology, but Halloween just passed about a month ago, and there's a term that they use that the Northern Kingdom goes to celebrate. They celebrate the dead, All right. And so they'll put a picture of the loved ones, the dead, and then they'll visit the cemeteries. All right. They'll bake cakes and stuff like that. And they actually showed you that they showed you that in the movie Coco. All right. So the Northern Kingdom, boy, whew, they heavily invested in that idol worship. All right. That Cesare Borgia. All right. The Roman Catholic Church. Anyway. All right. Let's go here. So now dealing with both Simeon and Levi, both tribes, they're divided against one another. All right. And a lot of them actually use that voodoo Santeria crap on each other, believe it or not. All right. Because what you got to understand, the Shemaiwan, all right, the Dominicans, all right, they don't acknowledge the Haitians. Okay. But in saying that, when they do come together, they can do a lot of damage. All right. When both tribes, both brethren come together, the Haitians and the Dominicans, they can do a hell of a lot of damage. All right. So there you go. That's in on that. Now, when it talks about for in their anger, they slew a man, and in their self-will, they dig down a wall, right? Because this goes back to what happened with their sister, Dinah. All right. Let me pull that up. If I said it right. Let's get Dinah. Genesis chapter 34. All right, I'm gonna start at the top. This is where their anger came from. Genesis 34:1. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. All right. And when so that you brothers, because I know I got some IUIC imposters probably watching this. All right. And if you're watching, good, listen, because you actually might learn something. And maybe you'll take what you've learned, go back and look it up yourself instead of regurgitating from your general bishop. All right. Because y'all don't have the balls to learn how to look shit up yourself. All right. You a bunch of man pleasers over there in IUIC. Not all of you, but majority of you are, because there's some sincere brothers over there. Right. But anyway, when it talks about he took her, all right, which let's go into that real quick. Because if I'm correct, that Hebrew word should be, laqua, all right, which means to siege, to lay hold, or to take, or ravish. Okay, this is where you get the word grape from, or you know what I mean when I say grape. All right, grape just means that you've been sieged, you've been taken. All right, same thing. When you take, same thing. If police catches you or whatever, and then they seize you, all right, you've been raped. That's all it means. All right. Same thing. If you're in a bar and you see a beautiful woman or whatever, you just gotta have her. What you gonna do? You gonna take her. All right. But yeah, man. So going back, all right. Now let's read how they became self-willed in their anger, where it actually stemmed from. So Genesis 34, verse 3. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel and spake kindly unto the damsel. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, get me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel and lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done, showing you that the other nations, the other heathen nations, the men are not to get with any of the daughters of Zion. All right. So any of you daughters of Zion that actually have a heathen husband, whether it be a Edomite husband or a Moabite husband, which is your so-called Chinese, or if it be a Japanese husband, all right, so-called Ammonite, all right, or any other heathen man, all right, your children, especially if you have children by that man, they're known as heathens, all right. There's no salvation for them, period. All right? And you better hope like hell that you part of the elect, because your husband damn sure ain't going to get saved. If you're a heathen, his ass is going straight to slavery in the kingdom, that is. All right? So any of you daughter of Zions out there, hey, you better ask somebody. Anyway, so verse 8, it says, and Hamor communed with them, saying, the soul of men Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you give her him to wife, and make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. Now, when you go into the law, all right, Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, to be exact, all right, you got to understand that that was in our law for us not to make marriages with the other heathen nations. Okay, and why is that? Because they will lead our people astray into falling off from our true living power, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and go off to worshiping these other false deities and idols. Okay, let's get a precept, right? Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 7. I'm going to start at the top. It says, when Yahweh thy power shall bring thee into the land, whither thou goest to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when Yahweh thy power shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them, and thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show them mercy. Because you got to understand too, when you go back to Genesis, the 9th chapter, all right, the son of Ham, which was Canaan, was cursed. And it tells you in Wisdom of Solomon, the 12th chapter, that they have been a cursed seed from the beginning. But the Lord, what he did was he had to wait till all of their sins and their iniquities, all right, have been reached up enough to where it was time for us to come into the Holy Land and completely take them down. All right? Because when you go into the history of the Canaanites and all the wicked practices that they was doing, a lot of what Esau, Edom does today in terms of bestiality, incest, practicing Moab, you should know what I mean when I say that. When you go into the history of Canaanites, they got all of that shit from Canaan. All right? Those so-called Africans over there in the region. Okay? A lot of them were practicing taking their child, doing child sacrifices through the god of Molech, okay, which today, or Marduk, or they are also known as the god of Baal. Okay, the Philistines, I believe, they worship to that as well. Okay, the true Philistines, that is. Okay, which was also another Hamitic tribe. You see? So a lot of the things that see, that's another way on how you can see Esau. They take everything from every other culture and then they make it into their own. They ain't got no fucking culture. You see what I'm saying? So that's why it's important that when you go into the scriptures, the documentation of secular history that's brought out, a lot of these different nations, it's best for you to look them up. Do a quick Google search, look up the history of what they used to practice, how they used to get down, so that you can understand that history, so that when you go and read the scriptures, you will understand why Yahweh Bashim Yahushua wanted us to stay straight away from them. You see what I'm saying? So going back here, Deuteronomy 7:2, or actually 7:3, it says, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto a son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of Yahweh be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. So here it is when what's the name's father in Genesis the 34th chapter, when he say, hey, come on, let's make a covenant and let's join together in marriages. You take some of our daughters, all right, or you take our sons to marry your daughters and vice versa. That's why that law was written in later on. And Deuteronomy, we was given that commandment not to do that. All right. That's why on the scene with Ezra and Nehemiah, all right, when they found out, all right, that our people mingled amongst the heathens, All right, which let's grab that. Let's get Nehemiah. Let's see. Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 23. In those days also saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab, and their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, which was Hebrew, all right, the Lashon Kadash, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them and cursed them and smote certain of them and plucked off their hair and made them swear by the Most High, saying, ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your sons or yourselves. Did not King Solomon of Israel sin by these things? Right? And right, because when King Solomon got up on age, all right, what happened to King Solomon? It wasn't him marrying 1,000 women. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So no, the sin wasn't that he married that amount of women. The sin was that eventually, because he got old, he allowed for his concubines to turn his heart away from Yahweh. And when you go into that account in 1 Kings, the 11th chapter, basically it tells you that he set up groves for the god of Kamash, which is the god worshipped by the Moabites, all right, and other gods as well. All right, that was the actual sin. But had his heart had been in the right place, like his father King David, because David had concubines as well. The difference between both men is David had his concubines in order. All right, even all the way up until his death, his his heart was in the right place with the Heavenly Father. That was the difference. King Solomon, however, when he got old, he allowed for his concubines to overtake his love from the Heavenly Father, and then they wanted him to worship his gods. That's why he set up the groves and stuff. We wasn't supposed to do that. So that's what it's saying from that perspective. Now Nehemiah got upset because the children, which the men, when an Israelite man gets with an Israelite woman, when an Israelite man gets with a heathen woman, guess what? Those children are Israelites. Why? Because it goes back to the seed of the father. It has nothing to do with the woman. The woman doesn't produce seed. Point blank, period. So there's no such thing as half caste. There's no such thing as, but I'm mixed. No, you are what your father is. Okay? If I take the seed of an apple, all right, from the grain, if I take a seed of an apple down in the state of Florida, right, and I dig it from the soil, take that seed out, and I go all the way to California, which is a different soil than a soil in Florida, that same seed, and I go to California, all right, and I plant that seed in California, it's still going to be the seed of an apple because it goes back to being a seed of an apple. So it's the same thing. It doesn't matter the man, the woman. If the man is the one that plows the field, then that when that branch grows up, it's going to go back to the root of which it came from. So no matter where you take that seed, it don't matter if you was in Chicago, it don't matter if you was in New York, it don't matter if you went all the way in Wyoming. It don't matter which you planted in. In other words, it don't matter what type of woman you sleep with. Guess what? That child is an Israelite at the end of the day. Right? Good water, man. So, dealing with Nehemiah, all right, he got upset because a lot of those children that were born, all right, they weren't keeping the customs of the Israelites. All right, they were speaking in the native tongue of the other heathen nations and vice versa. Okay, and that goes against our customs. You see what I mean? So now that we got all of that, going back to the tribes. All right, so Genesis 49:6, dealing with Simeon and Levi. O my soul, come not down into their secret until their assembly, my honor. All right, which once again, their secret assembly goes into their witchcraft. It says, be not thou united, for their anger, for in their anger they slew a man. And that's going back to what happened with their sister Dinah. All right, when you had that Hamite that went and defiled her, right? And in their self-will they dig down a wall. It says, cursed be their anger, for it was fierce. Because when you go back to the account dealing with their sister Dinah, all right, they actually told those Hamites that, okay, as long as your sons go back and circumcise themselves, then we'll give them into marriage. So when they went back and circumcised themselves, Simeon and Levi, they took their swords and then they killed all the men in their anger because of what he did to their sister Dinah. So that's where their fierce anger goes back to. You see what I mean? So, yeah, it says, cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel, and I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. And the Lord did that. Okay, that's why they're divided on that island. All right, as I said, the Dominicans, they hate the Haitians. All right, and they use witchcraft on you know, on each other. All right, practicing that voodoo and practicing that Santeria. Okay, and once again, like I showed you, they actually give you a little taste of that in the movie Coco, when you look up the movie Coco. All right, because once again, that voodoo that the Haitians, all right, which is the tribe of Levi, all right, the French, during the time of the wars, the French actually lost against the Haitians on the left-hand power, because the Haitians, even though they will have that Thuman and Urim, they used that voodoo to beat the French. That's how the French lost that war. You see, because remember the Haitians, they got that from the priesthood. They got that Thuman and Urim. All right, but they used it on the left-hand side, man. You see what I mean? So, all right, so where did I leave off? Let's go. All right, back in Genesis 49:8. So we dealt with Reuben. All right, we dealt with Levi and Simeon. So the next tribe we're focusing on is the top tribe. Okay, Judah, Yahawada, which is you so-called Negroes, all right? So-called African Americans today. Genesis 49:8. Judah, or Yahawada, okay, which Yahawada means praise Yahweh. Okay, that's what Leah named her son, okay, her fourth born son. She named him after the name of the Heavenly Father to give praise and thanks to Yahweh. That's how we know that his name is Yahweh. Okay, it's not Yahweh. It ain't Ahaya. Okay, when you get Genesis the 29th chapter, she named him Yahawada. You see? So you got to understand, man. All right, because she gave praise to the Heavenly Father for allowing her to conceive seed. Okay, because you got to understand, back in the ancient world, that was a woman's sole purpose, was to help bring up seed for a man in his household. That was the greatest thing a woman could ever do for her husband. And if she couldn't bring in a child, all right, you had, concubines, which Hagar, if you want to go a little bit further into that detail, Hagar would be considered, if you want to, your first surrogate mother. All right, because we all know that Sarah was barren and she couldn't conceive child. So what ended up happening? All right, Hagar became Abraham's concubine. All right, and we know the story. All right, Abraham had Ishmael. All right. Anyway, Genesis 49:8. So we're dealing with Judah. Okay, Yahawada. All right, which is you so-called Negroes, you so-called African Americans. All right, from the tribe of Judah, the head tribe. All right, the same tribe that Yahweh Shai, all right, who the word ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, comes out of. Genesis 49:8. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. All right, and thy hand shall be in the neck of thy enemies. and thy father's children shall bow down before thee. All right. And that's speaking of the father's children and speaking of the Edomites. They're going to bow to us. Right. It goes on, or matter of fact, Salakia. Yeah. It goes on to say, Judah is a lion's whelp. All right. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up and stooped down. And he couched as a lion, and as a old lion, who shall rouse him up? Right. Because Judah is likened unto a young lion, but at the same time, they will be in a certain condition or a certain state, like a docile sort of state, right? And they will eventually, being in that docile state, they will forget that Esau is the enemy. That's why you got a lot of so-called African Americans that are walking around marching, talking about some all lives matter, or when you try to get them to understand this wise counsel, this truth, they'll be the first ones to go and save the so-called white man. Oh, well, what about the so-called white man? Can he make it into the kingdom of heaven? Right? And see, a lot of that comes from them being so much so in a dumb, docile state that they so much so have forgotten who the real enemy is. Okay, but see, now we're in a time where that old lion is being roused up. And all of the atrocities that Esau, Edom has committed on all the 12 tribes, not just Judah in particular, all right, Judah being the main tribe, they're now rising and waking up, understanding that the so-called white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. You see what I mean? And beginning with the top banking elite families on down, because not all white people are Edomites. You're going to have Jakes, Israelites that look like Caucasian people. You see? So, yeah, you know, and so they not only being in a docile state, forgotten who the enemy is, but also they became very pacified, all right? And they became like an old lion. So therefore, the question being asked is, who's going to rouse him up? Okay, and if you are in the spirit and you understand, Judah is being roused up in these last days. Okay, because once Judah gets roused up, guess what? The other tribes follow suit, man. All right, let Judah get it popping off up in here, and watch all the rest of the tribes will follow suit. That's why when you go into the history, like when you talk about like hip hop, all right, when you talk about the style of clothes, all right, anything that Judah does, everybody else follows. That's one of the main reasons why they're the head tribes, man. Okay, because everybody follows Judah's lead. That's why Esau has Judah pretty much on everything, whether it be music, whether it be television shows, movies, sports. Okay, you have the Northern Kingdom. Sorry, you have the Southern Kingdom started with Judah, who's at the forefront of all of that, man. Because anything that Judah does, the other tribes, they land back off of it, so to speak. They follow suit. You see what I mean? So if you get Judah to do something, then more than likely the other tribes, they're going to follow suit and do it. You see what I mean? So there you go, man. All right. Moving on. Make sure we good for time. All right. Yeah, we good. And Babak Rashad, please let me know if I'm sounding good on the mic, if I'm coming in clearly. So back here, Genesis 49 and verse 10, it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver. Okay. Yep, here we go. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Okay, which signifies our Lord and Savior, Yahushua HaMashiach, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Okay, it's going to be unto Yahushua to bring the tribes back together. All right, and that's why it tells you the prophecy in Zechariah the 12th chapter that the tents of Judah have to be risen first. That's dealing with the southern kingdom. right? Because once you get the head tribe back into place, then, as I said, the rest follows. So that's why the tents of Judah had to be risen first, meaning they had to get the truth first. All right, you get the head tribe first, along with Benjamin and Levi, because they're part of the southern kingdom. Everybody else will follow. See what I mean? Also showed you that when you deal with just off the top, when you deal with Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, and going into the valley of the dry bones. All right, when you go, and I've done that breakdown a year ago, but if anybody wants to see that breakdown, just let me know. Post it on the comment board, and I'll repost it. I'll re-upload the link, or I'll just send the link. But basically, during the time when the truth came on the scene around 1969, 1970, you had a lot of groups marching, such as the Black Panthers. All right, Huey P. Newton. All right, and it was all talking about Black Power and everything. So you heard this this noise of all the tribes coming together. Also, you not only had the Southern Kingdom making some noise, but once they got out there on the forefront, rising up because of the oppression and stuff, who was following them? The Northern Kingdom. Look up the Chicano movement. Okay, because the Chicano movement, your Northern Kingdom, your Issacharites and stuff like that, man, they was right behind Judah, out there marching and stuff like that. You had Black Power and Brown Power. You see what I mean? So I say all that to say this: you got to understand that you got to understand that when Judah was out there, all right, marching and stuff in the street, you had the Chicano movement, the Brown Power, the Northern Kingdom. They was right behind Judah. Once again, you get Judah, the head tribe, in order, the rest follow suit, man. All right, go back and do your research. Just look up the Black Panther Party and look up the Chicano movement, and you'll see what I mean by that. The only difference was they had the breath entered into them, okay, as it says in Ezekiel the 37th chapter, but they were still spiritually dead, because although they were rising up, they still didn't know who they were. They didn't know that they were Israelites. All right, but right now, as it said in Revelation 11 chapter, and after 3 days and a half, okay, we stood upon our feet, which 3 days and a half represents a total of 350 years, because 1 day to the Heavenly Father is 1,000 years to us. So after 350 years from the time that we came over through transatlantic slave trade, all the way to 1969 and 1970, when you had a man by the name of Abba Bivens, whom the Lord put the spirit on, all right, to go into both the Old and the New Testament and to break it out, who the true Israelites were, all right, then those that saw us, fear fell upon them, because we started to rise up in great number. All right, and that's the reason why a lot of these nations, they're scared, because they know the next thing that's going to happen, man. We're going to come into power, and all of them, they're going to be subjects under us. So all of these nations, all right, as it pertains to Psalms, the 83rd chapter, they're scrambling together, all right, coming into confederacy, making an alliance to do away with the whole nation of Israel. All right, but the Lord, got other plans, because the scripture says the counsel of the wicked shall come to naught. And whose counsel is going to stand at the end of the day? Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai's counsel. You see? So, going on, Genesis 49:11 says, binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's coat unto the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of the grapes. All right, which symbolizes when Yahweh Shai returns, going into Isaiah the 63rd chapter, who is this that coming from Basra with dyed garments? Why is his garments going to be dyed? And that's symbolic for all the death, all right, the blood that's going to be shed when Yahweh Shai comes back and takes out this devil Esau. Which shows you that The Edomites will be in power when Yahushua comes back, man. Okay, that's a fact. When you get Isaiah the 63rd chapter, okay, it says his eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. All right, because when the Lord was on the scene, he loved wine. He drank a lot of wine, and his eyes turned red, bloodshot red. All right, and that happens. I remember my uncle when I used to grow up as a kid. He loved a bottle of rum. All right, and he wasn't a heavy drinker. He drank it in moderation. But anytime he used to come over and play a game of spades, you know how black people like to play spades. Anytime him, my other uncles, aunties, they used to get together, used to go downstairs in the basement. All right, they used to put on Prince, Aretha Franklin in the background. All right, and they either used to play dominoes or they used to play a game of spades. And anytime he would drink rum, after like 10, 15 minutes later, you look at his eyes and they bloodshot red. It's the same thing with our Lord, Yahushua. Anytime he drank wine, his eyes was red. You see what I mean? So that's what that's going into. All right. So that's pretty much dealing with Judah. All right. So now the next tribe, all right, we're going to be dealing with is Zebulon, which is your so-called Guatemalans and Panamanians, Salaki. All right. So Genesis 49 and 13, Zebulon, all right, Salakia. It says, Zebulon shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Now, if you get an ancient map, what you got to understand, when you look at the ancient map of Israel, and you look at the borders of Zebulon, they're nowhere near Zidon, because Zidon is at the top, okay, of Israel. Zebulon is like right in the middle, so they're nowhere near the coastal lines. So this is how we know that this is talking about the Guatemalans and the Panamanians, because when you look at South America and you look at the Panama Canal, all right, they have found remnants and artifacts of Zidonian ships from Tarshish coming over. They found all sort of artifacts over there in the Panama Canal. That's how we know today that the Guatemalans and the Panamanians are the tribe of Zebulon. You see what I mean? Let me read it again. Genesis 49 and 13. It says, Zebulon shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships. That's speaking of the Panama Canal. And it says, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Why? Because during the time, and I read it earlier, all right, King Hiram had his seamen, all right, his navy men, under the orders of King Solomon, they would travel from Israel all the way over to the Americas. This is where you get those monuments of the Olmec heads, as I mentioned earlier within this camp session. Okay, those Olmec heads goes back to the Zidonians, which were Hamites, right? So, a little bit on Zebulon, all right? Now, when you deal with the Mayans, all right, Mayans, which you go into that word, Mayans, it means dweller of or springs, right? And the Panama Canal over in that region in South America is where trades come through. So the border shall be of Zidon, as I stated, it's talking about all those different Olmec heads down in South America, which, by the way, those Olmec heads were used as navigation. So anytime they kept traveling in and out, they knew where to go. All right. And they tell you that through secular history. All right. So that's pretty much Zebulon. All right. Now the next tribe, Issachar. All right. Your so-called Mexicans today. Genesis 49 and 14. Issachar is a strong ass couching down between two burdens. Okay. And Issachar is known for being hard workers. All right. Which the ass symbolizes the donkey. And I believe I mentioned, well, not mentioned, but I heard the beloved Elder Apostle Tahar speak on this many years ago about when he went down to Mexico City. They actually had an image of a donkey carrying two different burdens. which proves that the Issacharites, or the so-called Mexicans today, are indeed of the tribe of Issachar. Now, the Mexicans, we know they're known as hard workers, okay? And when you go into the Hebrew word for Issachar, which is Yashashkar, okay? Now, it'll tell you here, there is a recompense, but really it means one who is hired. When you go into the etymology of it, it actually means one who is hired. That's why they are known to be, they're known as one of the hardest working tribes. All right. When I left Chicago and I moved down to Arizona, I used to stay in Surprise, Arizona. Okay. Which is about 20 to 40 minutes down from Phoenix, depending on, the estate that you live in. And when I moved out there, there was a lot of Issacharites. And one of the things that I noticed about Issachar is they'll be the first ones up at 4 o'clock in the morning out there on the corners waiting to pick up work, man. You know what I mean? They'll be the first ones out there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Here come Esau in his pickup truck, and he'll take about 5 or 6 Issacharites. They'll come on the back of the truck with their tool belts on and everything, and then he'll take them to whatever job site he needs to take them to, and he'll pay them cash in hand. They're the hardest working tribe, man. Okay? Hence why their name means one who is hired, because that name, Issachar, that was a nomen omen to set them up for who they truly are as a people. You see? So, yeah, man. And now when it talks about, well, I'll just say this because I want to keep it short and simple. So basically, you also go into the fact that they were blessed with the ability to read the constellations. All right, and I believe that's First Chronicles. Let me grab that real quick. First Chronicles, the 12th chapter. Yep, First Chronicles 12 and 32. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment. That's why down in South America, those pyramids, all right, they could tell the signs just by looking up at the stars. So when you get such as like the Mayan calendar going back to 2012, all right, they were right on par with that because they were blessed with that gift, understanding the times. All right, hence how they were able to build the pyramids in South America, because they were so in tune with nature. Right. And once again, this is dealing with the tribe of Issachar, the so-called Mexicans. All right. And once again, it goes back to them having understanding of the times. Now, when it talks about them couching down between two burdens, that's speaking of both North and South America, because if memory serves me correct, and one of you brothers can correct me if I'm going off, but I read somewhere where they actually started off in North America, somewhere around California and stuff, until they started traveling southward. And then when they arrived in Mexico, they ended up resting in Mexico. Right? So the two burdens represents being between two land masses, and that's North America and South America, which is, North America and Central America, I should say. Right? So when they arrived in Mexico, they saw that Mexico was a good land. So that's where they ended up residing in. All right. And later on, after they did all of that, they basically, let's read here, verse 15. And he saw that rest was good in the land, that it was pleasant, which is talking about Mexico, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tributary, meaning what? During the 15th century, when the Spaniards came in, they became subjects unto the Spaniards. When you go into that secular history. Okay? And so after that, the rest is, history. We understand a lot of slaughtering went on, and, that's history for you, man. You know, Esau came in, did his thing, and there you have it. So that's dealing with them. Now, on this board, you have 12 tribes, but one tribe in particular, which is the next tribe we want to go into, that you don't see is not on this board, is dealing with the tribe of Dan. Now, according to the scriptures, the last that we hear of the tribe of Dan, I believe, is in the book of Judges, the 18th chapter. All right. And to show you that when you get Revelation, the 7th chapter, and it breaks down the 144,000 in the order, all the 12 tribes that you see here on the chart is mentioned, okay? But the tribe of Dan is not mentioned there. All right. Now, we don't know where the tribe of Dan is. We know that they were amalgamated amongst the 12 tribes. So when we get into the kingdom, we'll have that full understanding, because when you talk about Samson being one of the judges, he was from the tribe of Dan. Okay. But Genesis 49:16, it says, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. And Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. You see? And so Dan, or the tribe of Dan, he was the actual part of the northern kingdom. Okay? And like I said, they got amalgamated, meaning they got mixed in with the other 12 tribes. So as all we know of, the last of the tribe of Dan is mentioned in Judges, the 18th chapter. All right? And they actually committed adultery. Okay? But like I said, do we know who the tribe of Dan is today? No, because they've been mixed in with the other tribes. But when we get into the kingdom, we're going to have all of that understanding of who's who. All right? So there you go. Verse 18, I have waited for thy salvation, O power. Verse 19, now we're coming up on the next tribe, which is Gad. All right? Your so-called Native Americans, Native Indians. All right? Which seems to be catching a lot of flack at the moment, because you got a lot of reservation Native Americans and even $5 Indians. Now they're trying to disprove this chart, claiming that the so-called Native Americans are not the tribe of Gad. They're not of the nation of Israel, and they don't have any understanding, because there's all types of facts and artifacts, information, relics found. Okay, one particular, they have a ceremony called the corn dance, and that corn dance basically is during the time of the feast of what we have when you get Leviticus, right after the Passover, you have the Feast of Weeks. Okay, in the time of harvest, and during the green corn dance ceremony, all right, they harvest the crops. They offer up sacrifices. So how would they know to offer up the sacrifices during the green corn dance? They will have to be part of the 12 tribes. All right, because no other nation of people was given that understanding. You see what I mean? No other nation of people was given that understanding. All right. So I'm just trying to watch out for these birds, because it's out here. They call it swooping season, and a lot of these birds, they got nests in them. And I'm just trying to be aware, because they like to swoop down on people. So it's a lot. If it seems like I'm always watching my back, that's the reason being. But back here again at the tribe of Gad. Now the tribe of Gad, once again, represents your so-called Native Americans. So it says Gad, which the word Gad in the Hebrew, all right, in the Lashon Kadash means truth. All right, once again, it's your so-called Native Americans, and they come from the tribe of Gad. All right. Now, it says here, Gad is a truth shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Okay. And when you deal with that, all right, the Gadites were overcome by the U.S. Cavalry. All right, when you go into the history. All right. But the elect of Gad will overcome in these last days. All right. as they are being awakened to the truth. And how they being awakened through the truth? By hearing the word. That's why all you need to do is come out here, all right, on the highways and hedges and just preach the word. Okay. Just as many of you, sisters and brothers that's tuning in, all right, you have people from all different walks of life, all across the four corners of the earth that are watching in, listening, and learning. So the internet does a lot of the heavy lifting for us. That's why all you need to do is come out here and just teach the word. And the Lord will take care of everything else, man. All right. We just been commanded to just preach the word, be instant in season and out of season. That's all we need to do. Right. So now dealing with Gad, let me finish reading here. All right. Through my notes. So when you look up the Indian Wars, all right, whereas Esau, the U.S. government, all right, what you got to understand is they made a lot of treaties, okay, with the so-called Native Americans, right? And with Gad ended up with those treaties, I meant to say they made treaties with Gad, but at the end of it all, in the midst of making those treaties, in the end, it was projected about 500 of those treaties or more of those treaties, all right, when you go into the history, have been violated and or broken by the U.S. government. You see what I mean? Give you the scenario, case in point. When you go into the Beacons Rebellion in 1681, a lot of that had to do with your top banking elites trying to get all of the landfills off the Native Americans, right? And that began the whole process of the so-called white versus black and the whole white supremacy. So what the elites did during that time was they took all the indentured servants of the Caucasians and they pretty much gave them, how do you want to say, they gave them the freedom, they gave them rights over the Israelites, okay? And that began the process of white supremacy. You see what I mean? But now, with the way that the state of the world is in today, right? Basically, a lot of those lower level Edomites, they are now waking up knowing that that was bullshit. That was all set up. Because now Esau don't even give a fuck about his own people, right? And so white supremacy has pretty much failed these lower level Edomites. But case in point, the U.S. government or the U.S. cavalry, when they made those treaties to the Native Americans, which is the tribe of Gad, they broke a lot of those treaties, man. A lot of those treaties. All right. And they did the same thing with the Seminole Indians, all right, which is a tribe of Reuben. You see? So they didn't keep nothing. At the end of the day, they kept nothing. All right. With our brethren, all right, the Gadites. So, but hey, call Halayim Yahweh Shem Yahushua, because as the scripture says, the truth overcame Gad, which is talking about the U.S. cavalry. But guess what? Gad is going to overcome Esau, Edom in these last days, beginning with the elect of Gad. All right. So that's pretty much it on Gad. All right. So now the next tribe is the tribe of Asher. All right. Which is your so-called Colombians and Uruguayans. All right. And Genesis 49:20, it says, and out of Asher, his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Now, Asher simply means happy. All right. And this is dealing with the Incas, right? And Asher, they're known for their richness in foods. Okay. And what you got to understand is they eat really good. All right. Down there where they're located. All right. And they're very healthy. All right. And they pride themselves on natural remedies. Okay. From all of their minerals and resources because they're eating good off the fruit of the land. All right. And your modern Colombians and Uruguayans and also Brazilians. Okay. That's why they called, I believe it was Christopher Columbus when he came over to the Americas and South America to be exact. he actually called it the land of Ophir. All right, because of all of this gold, resources, minerals. All right, and Brazil is known as one of the top. When you go into it, when you look up Brazil delicacies, all right, you know about their carnivores, their festivals, all right, but they're known for their amount of resources. All right, that's why you have the Panama Canal, all right, coming in of exports, imports, all of that stuff. You see? So Brazil, hey man, just look it up for yourself. Okay, but Asher, they are a very happy people, man. Very happy people. Okay, and they're known for their good health and stuff because they eat off the land. You see what I mean? So very good people. Those some of the most genuine people you can ever meet. All right, the tribe of Asher, man. Very good people. All right, and they, like I said, they always happy. All right, so that's pretty much, Asher in a nutshell. All right, now let's move on to the next one, Naphtali. Okay, which seems to cause a lot of controversy. All right, because you have this doctrine that the Polynesians, all right, come from the tribe of Naphtali. Now, let me see if I can pull up real quick. See if I got it here. Let's see. Let me go into. Yeah, because if I don't. Yeah, nah. Actually, I might. Let me see. Nah, all good. I don't have it on this. But what I was going to say is it's on my other phone, which I'm streaming off of. But what I was going to say about Zebulon is I got a website of one of these archaeologists that actually did a study because he actually set sail around the whole continent of South America. And what he found in the studies was when you deal with the Polynesians before, some of them ended up in Hawaii and now call themselves Hawaiians, right? They actually met the tribe of, or actually they met some of the Northern Kingdom tribes. Now, when you deal with the Polynesians, and I've done multiple breakdowns on this, all right? The Polynesians' bloodline goes back to the sons of Japhet, all right? And basically, when you go into the sons of Japhet, one son in particular, which name is Javan or Yawan, okay, which today is known as Ionia or Greece, all right, the country of Greeks. They were your original Minoans, all right, which Ionians and Minoans, the same people, but they go back to a people known as the island of Crete or the Anatolia. And before Esau took over the land, all right, the Minoans, which were a dark-skinned race of people, they were your original islanders. They actually possessed that region. So they possessed all the way from Crete to Kittim, which is known today as Cyprus, and all the Greek islands. Okay, and then also you had their cousins, which were blood relatives, known as the Etruscans. All right, which comes across your modern day Fijians today, Modi, Samoans, stuff like that. And when you go into those relics and those statues and stuff of the Etruscans, you'll see the resemblance. All right. Now they showed you that in the movie of Bounty with Mel Gibson, an old movie, and they showed you how those islanders, all right, in their tradition, they wore the cloths, all right, and back then, not today, but back then in the ancient world, the women, they used to have their breasts out, all right, and their hair long and stuff, and then the guys, they nothing up top, but then they'll wear the cloth. Well, when you go into ancient relics, and when you go into the history and dealing with fresco art, paintwork, and stuff, they showed you that dealing with the the Etruscans and the Minoans, especially the Minoans, they had the same heritage. Now, what happened when you deal with this, all right, to put all of that to bed, during the time when Esau Edom came on the scene, all right, he ended up pushing out the Etruscans out of their lands. And to bring that information out, let's go here real quick. And let me go to my Japhet folder. I don't even have it on this phone. I don't think I have it on this phone. Hold on. I think I do. I just haven't. Okay, yeah, see, let me just find it real quick. Salakia. If I can't find it on this phone, it's all good. I'll just try to, because I actually like to read it so you brothers and sisters can get the actual understanding behind it. But if I don't have it on this phone, it's all good. Let me just see real quick. Supplies. Not. Let me see. Now, all good. I don't have it on this phone. Or do I? What's going on? Nah, okay, I ain't got it on this phone. It's all good. But to bring you up to speed, basically what happened was during the Etruscans, all right, in Italy, before Esau Edom took over, all right, basically, when you look up secular history, they called them the white newcomers, which was another name for Esau. And the white newcomers, what they did was when they started moving up into Rome, Italy of Rome, they started to take over, and then they started to push out the Etruscans. Now, back then, the Etruscans, they were known as a seafaring people. And they were conglomerated to pack up their things, for lack of better terms. And basically what they did, they was actually pushed out. And so when they got on the ships, that's when they started to travel further down. And that's how they really ended up on the islands. All right. Because during the time when Esau was taking over, when he came in first as Alexander the Great, when you watch the movie 300, okay, with the Spartans, all right, which goes back to the Lacedaemonians, which were actual Israelites, they were actually teamed up with some of those Greeks, those Minoans. All right, when you actually look up the history, all right, and those Minoans, they're known for having dreadlocks and stuff like that, which that's a heathen custom. That's not a custom of the Israelites. All right, that's why when you watch these period pieces of these old school movies, like dealing with Alexander and all of that stuff, they actually get those top scholars and everything, and they'll tell you the real history. They won't do that now in Hollywood, but when you watch those period pieces, a lot of them, they tell the truth. And so as a result, going back to the man, I forget his name, but what he did was when he looked up the archaeological findings, he saw that the actual the Polynesians, what they did was they traveled. Some of them ended up on the outskirts of, like, Tonga and all of that stuff. But the bulk of them, all right, ended up in Hawaii. But prior to coming up on Hawaii, the first stop was through South America, and they actually made trade agreements. They did trades among the Northern Kingdom. Now, did some of the Northern Kingdom, all right, actually mixed in with the Polynesian community? Absolutely. All right, because remember, all of the seed of Israel is mixed in with all of the heathen nations. So within the Polynesian community, are you going to have Jakes? Absolutely. This is why you have to judge the spirit by the spirit, because not every Polynesian is an Israelite, because the Polynesians go back to Japheth. All right, so that whole nonsense about the Polynesians come from the tribe of Naphtali, that's a bold-faced lie. The tribe of Naphtali are your so-called Argentina and Chileans. All right, now when you deal with that, all right, let's read the scripture here. Let's get Salakia, miss my place. We go back here. So Genesis, this fly won't leave me alone. Let's get my screen back up. Here we go. Genesis 49 and verse 21. It says, Naphtali is a hind let loose, and he giveth goodly words. All right. And so when you deal with Naphtali or Naphthalia, all right, which means wrestling, all right, which again is your Argentinian and Chileans today. Basically, they're a nomadic type of people, and they like to move around a lot, right? And when it talks about he gives goodly words, it's because when the Spaniards came down, all right, the natives of that tribe, they spoke peaceably, all right, to the Spaniards, all right. But you know, given Esau's nature, all right, he pretty much ended up tricking them, all right, and then like he did the other tribes, all right, he started slaughtering them, man. All right, he started manipulating them and stuff like that, just like when they did to the Gadites, right? They befriended the Gadites, started trading, and then eventually they started popping them off. You see what I mean? So same thing with Naphtali, all right? And you know, when you deal with Naphtali, all right, let's get Deuteronomy. See if I can find it real quick. Deuteronomy 33 and 23, it says, and of Naphtali, he said, oh, Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full with the blessing of Yahweh, possess thou the west and the south. That's why when you look at South America, you see Argentina and both Chile, all right? Argentina is west, Chile is south, all right? Which is another reason how we know that the Argentinians and the Chileans today are from the tribe of Naphtali. Because when they came over, that was part of their blessing. They would possess the west and the south. So when you look at a mapping of South America, Argentina sits west, okay, and Chile is down south of the border. Just look it up. All right, that was part of their blessing. So that's how we know that Argentinians and the Chileans are from the tribe of Naphtali. Okay. So let me see. I think that's all I want on there. Now, next tribe, you have Ephraim and Manasseh, which Ephraim is interchangeable with Joseph. Okay, so anytime you mention the word Joseph, all right, it's interchangeable with Ephraim, all right, which represents the northern kingdom. So it says here, Genesis 49 and 22, Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. You see, now Joseph in the Hebrew is Yawasap. Okay. Now let's deal with Ephraim, which means I'm a fruitful. I am fruitful represents your so-called Puerto Ricans. Okay. And Manasseh, which means to forget, represents your so-called Cubans. All right. Now, I don't know if any of you brothers and sisters into music, but do any of you guys know a Cuban hip hop artist turned, I guess you could say, he went from hip hop to what? What's that genre? He ended up switching his genre, but basically, when you think of a Manasseh hip hop artist, you should be thinking about Pitbull, all right? Because he's a Cuban. He's a so-called Cuban, okay? And when you look up his when it said that because he was recently on Drink Champs, and he spoke about the history. All right, because when you deal with Ephraim, all right, and dealing with the walls, it's talking about the Puerto Ricans and them multiplying through the blessing in Genesis the 48th chapter. They eventually will come up to the Americas, and they were of the first tribes of the Northern Kingdom to come up to the Americas. It was the so-called Puerto Ricans, right? And we're gonna break it down. So Ephraim, all right, being the so-called Puerto Ricans, all right, they was counted as the principal blessing. Although Manasseh was the eldest, and according to our custom, the eldest gets the inheritance. But see, through the spirit, it was set up for Ephraim to get the blessing. That's why when Joseph brought it in to the father, all right, he basically had his hand placed on Ephraim first and then Manasseh, and then he was like, nah, you got it mixed up. And he was like, nah, I know what I'm doing, because it was set up through the spirit that way. So now when it talks about a fruitful bow, all right, a fruitful bow is when it talks about the fruitful bow whose branches run over the walls, that's speaking of your so-called Taínos, all right? And they have a lot of children. So referring to themselves as Boricua, okay, or Boricua, all right? Like have Big Pond, Boricua, Boana, you know what I mean? The Boricua, right? So now when you deal with this, verse 23, it says, the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. The archers represents Esau, Edom, okay? The Edomites. We still on the tribe of Ephraim, right? So going into the history, the archers is speaking about the Spaniards and the conquistadors, right? And when they came to Puerto Rico and Cuba, and the next verse 24, it says, but his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty power of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, right? So when it talks about his bow abode in his strength means that they kept having children, all right? And the fact that Esau couldn't exterminate them, because it goes back to the blessing, right? So, let me see here. Verse 25, it says, even by the power of thy father who shall help thee, and by the Almighty who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb, the blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of the progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills, and they shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. All right. So the northern tribes, that goes into the northern kingdom being separated from the southern kingdom, all right, is compared to Joseph being separated from his brethren when he was sold to the Ishmaelites, going back into the history in Genesis, you see. And so at the moment, the Puerto Ricans, all right, being a tribe of Ephraim, all right, they like to have a lot of babies, man, because it was in the blessing that they should be a multitude of nations, all right. And I believe that's in Genesis, the 48th chapter, all right. So just get a sip of water, and we just about done wrapping up. Ishmaelites, right? So when you deal with Joseph in Revelation, the 7th chapter, when it goes into the breakdown of the 12,000 tribes, remember Joseph is synonymous with Ephraim. And to prove that, let's get Numbers chapter 1, and I think it's verse 32. Numbers 1 and 32. Of the children of Joseph, namely of the children of Ephraim, by their generations after their families, by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names, from 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war. So throughout the scriptures, anytime you see Joseph or Ephraim, it's synonymous with each other. All right. So although you don't see Ephraim or Manasseh in Revelation, the 7th chapter, they're there under the name Joseph. That's what it actually means. And a lot of people don't understand that. All right. So that's it on that. All right. And now, out of the last tribe that we're going to deal with is the tribe of Benjamin. All right, which is Benjamin. All right. Now it says here, Genesis 49 and 27, Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All right. And that's going into your so-called West Indies and Jamaicans today. And when it talks about they raven like a wolf because of the sounds, all right, that they utter, which is likened unto a wolf. All right. And this is actually known through their music. Okay. Especially when they were saying different songs about Babylon going down, because a lot of your Jamaicans, especially, they got all type of songs talking about the downfall of America. So keep in mind when a wolf actually howls, all right, before he hunts. So in the morning, that also goes into representing the return of Yahweh Shai. Okay, and Benjamin, when it's all said and done, they're going to devour their prey, which is the Edomites. All right. And then prior to them devouring Esau, when that time comes, they're going to divide the spoil. Okay. And when it talks about dividing the spoil at nighttime, that's actually speaking of doing the downfall of Esau, Edom. Okay. Because you got to think when you, even when you go into Isaiah, the 60th chapter, where it talks about the gates shall stay open, when we bring in all of the riches and stuff like that of the Gentile nations, all right, all of that is going to be divided amongst the elect. You see, and so that's pretty much basic dealing with the tribe of Benjamin. All right, and another thing too, Benjamin. All right, they were nearly wiped out as a nation. All right, that's the reason why when you read the account in Numbers, they had to repopulate with heathen women, showing you that the Lord doesn't need the daughter of Zion to rebuild the nation. He can just simply take the men of Israel, and the men of Israel can get with the heathen women to rebuild up a nation. All right, because when you understand what happened to the tribe of Benjamin, all right, they took on the daughters of Shiloh. They took on the other heathen women because the other tribes made an oath not to give their daughters to the tribe of Benjamin. So Moses had to tell them, all right, look, there's a festival that goes on, wait in the bushes, all right, and then when the time presents itself, go out and take a woman to be thy wife. And that's what they did to repopulate their tribe. All right, so they just took the women from the other nations, the heathen nations, and that's how they was able to repopulate. All right, showing you, like even the beloved elder apostles always say, you don't need the daughters of Zion to repopulate, because what the seed is determined by the man, not the woman. All right, and that's all throughout the scriptures. All right, they even the book of Ruth goes into that history. All right, Ruth was a Moabite. All right, she played the role as the kinsman redeemer. You see, and so really the only real way for you to understand that is you gotta understand the history. You gotta understand our culture. You gotta understand the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And this is why a lot of people get butt hurt in their feelings, because in order for you to understand this and gravitate to it through the spirit, you got to subdue your whole everything that you was ever taught in this society. You got to do away with it. If you truly want to understand this history, you got to subdue your own understanding. That's why Yahweh Shah said you got to be reborn again unto like a babe, because when children are born into the world, their mind is like a brand new sponge. What happens if you take that sponge and you dip it into water? Then it starts to soak up the fluid and everything, which is symbolic to soaking up the knowledge. So what you need to do is your sponge right now, which is your head, your brain, your thought process, squeeze it out. Get rid of all of that excess fluid that you've soaked up, squeeze it out, and then soak up the right fluid. Okay, which is this wise counsel. All right, so I'm gonna leave it off there, and that completes the a brief history going into the 12 tribes chart. All right, so with that, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, better known as Great Millstone, who rule well. And peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. And Lord's will. All right, this camp session was edifying. And, like I said, based off the notes that I brought out, there's a lot more history going into the depths, all right, of the 12 tribes chart, all right? But hopefully I was able to give you enough, to be able to go out and do your own studies, because all of this information dealing with the 12 tribes, who they are today, all right, a lot of the history has been covered up. You see what I mean? And this is why we have the apostles. This is why we have our teachers, all right, to teach us these things. And we are now taking up after their labors, all right? So if the Spirit permits, we'll probably do an in-depth breakdown on Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter. But for now, that should be able to give you enough information to go into the history of who these people actually are and who they actually go back to. All right, so we're going to close out with that. And Lord's will, this camp lesson was edifying. So Lord willing is on to the next one. Shalom.